veterans, assisting them in getting their disability benefits. And I do this from the Post 5 of the American Legion in Brattleboro. I work at the Veterans Convenience, but I do have office hours here on Thursdays from approximately 11 until 3 with time out for the Rotary meeting at noon. Basically, what our program tonight is going to be a presentation by myself and Katelyn Atwood, who is in charge of the Poverty Law program at the Vermont Law School concerning veterans. And she's been at this, doing this work now for about a year or so, or a little bit more than a year, I believe. And she helped recruit me into the program too. We're both doing this free of charge to the veterans, although I might charge for any incidental expenses such as doctor's opinions and things of that nature. But essentially, in any representation before the Veterans Administration, I'm doing it for free. Katelyn is going to discuss a number of veterans programs, and but the main one that she'll be discussing is the Veterans Benefits Administration, which concern principally disability compensation and pensions. But I'll let her talk about what she is going to say. So, Katelyn, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom. My name is Katelyn Atwood. I'm a staff attorney at the South Royalton Legal Clinic at Vermont Law School. I am currently the Vermont Poverty Law Fellow funded by the Vermont Bar Foundation to spearhead the Vermont Veterans Legal Assistance Project. I represent veterans in VA disability and other VA cases from around the state. In Windsor and Orange counties, I represent folks in civil matters, veterans specifically in civil matters. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the introduction to a broad spectrum of veterans benefits. We're going to talk a little bit about the population of American veterans. We're going to talk about the VA in general, and then we're going to talk about how disability benefits, pension benefits, dependency benefits, and a little bit about healthcare and education benefits. So first, the American veterans landscape. What is the population of American veterans across the country? There's roughly 21.6 million veterans in the United States today. 7.1 million of those are from the Vietnam era, and roughly 7.2 million are from the Gulf War era, starting with Desert Storm in 1990. There's roughly 8.92 or 9 million veterans enrolled in the VA healthcare system, which makes the VA healthcare system the largest healthcare system in America. 3.9 million veterans are currently receiving service-connected disability payments from the VA. According to the National Center for Veterans Analysis and Statistics, the veterans population is projected to gradually decrease over the next 20 to 30 years, but that population is going to become more diverse. Currently, of the 21.6 million vets in America today, about 10%, 9 to 10% of those are female veterans. That is going to increase to 16% by 2043, and the percentage of minority veterans is projected to increase from 11 African American veterans from 11 to over 16% by 2043, and Hispanic veterans are going to increase from just under 6% to just over 12% by 2043. All of this is to say that the American veteran population is going to become incredibly diverse, and they have all sorts of needs, depending on what service era they were in, what branch they were in, what sort of job they had while they were in the military, and where they may or may not have been deployed. So the VA. So the VA is charged with providing care for this incredibly diverse population of veterans across America. So the Department of Veterans Affairs is the government department in charge of veterans' health benefits. It's a cabinet level department. The current secretary is Robert McDonald, and there are 3 subcategories under the broader subheading of the VA. The first is the Veterans Health Administration. Those are the folks that administer the large VA healthcare system with almost 9 million veterans enrolled. So it's a pretty big job. The Veterans Benefits Administration deals with administering all of the various other benefits other than healthcare that the VA distributes to American veterans who are eligible. And the third subcategory of the VA is the National Cemetery Administration. Those folks take care of all of the veterans' cemeteries across the country. So what benefits exactly does the VA administer? The VA administers service-connected disability compensation. And keep in mind now, we're under the subheading of the Veterans Benefits Administration, okay? Service-connected disability compensation, non-service-connected pension, dependency and indemnity compensation. So these are dependent benefits, benefits for primarily spouses and children. Death pension, as we mentioned, healthcare, that's under the Veterans Health Administration. Education benefits, vocational rehabilitation and training, burial benefits, home loans, VA life insurance programs, and various other dependent benefits. Okay? So who is eligible for VA benefits? And when we're talking about VA benefits, we're talking about any sort of benefit that is administered by the VA, whether it be healthcare or all of the other benefits that we talked about under the auspices of the Veterans Benefits Administration. Okay, so to receive most VA benefits, and when I say most, I don't mean all, this is just most, you must be a veteran within the terms of the statute, with active military service. National Guard and Reserve Service members who have never been called up to active federal service are not eligible for VA benefits. This is crucial to keep in mind. There are certain exceptions, such as if you were injured on active duty for training, but that is usually determined on a case-by-case basis. You have to have been discharged under conditions other than dishonorable, and some benefits, like we said, this is for most VA benefits, require a minimum length of duty requirement. If you were enlisted before September 1980, then you don't have a minimum length of duty requirement. If you enlisted after September 1980, notice enlisted, if you're an officer, this does not apply to you. If enlisted after September 1980, then you have a 24-month continuous active duty requirement or the full period that you were called to active duty. There are many exceptions to this 24-month continuous active duty period. The biggest ones being service-connected disability. Obviously, if you were hurt and you couldn't continue your duty, then that exempts you. Early out, hardship, and hardship discharge. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the crown jewel of VA benefit programs, the largest one, service-connected disability compensation. The main feature of this program is that we are not talking about financial need or income. It's not based on how much money you have. It's based on how disabled you are, and if you were disabled while you were in service. The program aims to compensate veterans for reduction in their earning capacity caused by their military service. It's awarded on a percentage basis, usually from 0 to 100% in increments of 10. Depending on what disability you have, it might be increments of 20. They're awarded in monthly payments. It's tax-free. It is not offset by other income. So you can receive service-connected disability as well as Social Security, for example, at the same time. And age does not matter here. Okay, so that's just an overview of the program. Basic eligibility requirements You have to be a veteran. A veteran, in statutory language, a veteran is a person who has served in the active military, naval or air service, and who was discharged or released therefrom under conditions other than dishonorable. You can find that at 38 Code of Federal Regulations 3.1, Section D. So you have to be a veteran. You have to have a current disability. You have to be disabled right now. And you must have evidence of an in-service disease, injury, or event that caused your current disability. And there has to be a connection between your service and your current disability that you have now. This nexus element, the connection element, is the one that is most litigated in disability compensation benefits. So your disease or disability that you're currently suffering from has to have been incurred or aggravated as a result of your service. The thing I want to note here is there is no length of duty service requirement, length of duty requirement for service-connected disability, okay? No length of duty requirement here. So when you apply for service-connected disability, the biggest thing to remember is file an intent, what's called an intent to file claim. That is VA form 21-0966. After you file this intent to file claim, which basically says, hey VA, I'm going to file an application for disability benefits within the next year. Here is my intent to do that. The VA then bookmarks that date for you from your intent to file claim. If you file within a year, then you get retroactive benefits back to the date that you filed your intent to file claim. So you basically bought yourself an extra year of retroactive benefits just by filing an intent to file claim. In order to file your actual application for service-connected disability, remember within the year after that you filed your intent to file claim, you can apply online using eBenefits. That's www.ebenefits.va.gov. You can apply on paper using the VA form 21-526EZ. Once you put together your application for benefits, I highly, highly recommend that you mail in your application, certified mail, return receipt requested, to the VA White River Junction Benefits Office. Their mailing address is 215 North Main Street, White River Junction, Vermont, 05009. You can also fax in your application for benefits to the VA Evidence Intake Center. The fax number for the Eastern Seaboard Evidence Intake Center is 844-524-4260. One thing that I wanted to highlight for veterans is the VA has just come out with a program called a fully developed claim. That basically means that you have submitted all of the medical records with your application for benefits that you want the VA to consider and nothing more, okay? So once you submit your application and you check the box saying fully developed claim, the VA is not going to gather any more evidence for you, okay? The VA has a statutory duty to assist in helping you as a veteran get your records together for your VA service-connected disability compensation. You are waiving, essentially, you're waiving that right if you file your service-connected disability claim under the fully developed claim program. So the VA says, if you file your fully developed claim, you're going to get a decision faster, but that is all the evidence that they are going to consider if you submit your claim under that program. So I strongly urge you to be very careful. If you truly believe that you have all of your records together, then that's great, file under the fully developed claim program. But if your disability could be evolving or there could be more evidence later, you might want to consider not checking that box for the fully developed claim. Okay, so moving on to non-service connected pension. So this is a completely different program than the Service-Connected Disability Program, but still administered by the Veterans Benefits Administration under the VA. So for a non-service-connected pension, it's kind of exactly how it sounds. Income and age matter here, okay? The pension program are payments to low-income veterans who are age 65 or older, or are permanently and totally disabled. And this is only for veterans who have served in wartime. Your total and permanent disability does not have to be a result of your service. So your injury does not have to be incurred in service. So it's very similar to Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, for folks who are familiar with that program. So again, your disability matters, your income matters. This is a means-tested program, so the more money you have, the less pension you can get. And this is only for veterans who have served in wartime. So Congress has decided when statutory periods of when the United States has been in war. Most recently for the Gulf War, that's been going on since August 2nd of 1990. So for any more recent veterans, you probably fall into the Gulf War wartime period. For Vietnam veterans, it is a statutory period of time, and you only have to have served 1 day in wartime. So generally here with non-service connected pension, there are no dual benefits, cannot get pension and disability, but there are exceptions. For example, there are exceptions basically if you receive a very low amount of another benefit, because it is a means-tested benefit, then you probably are still eligible for non-service connected pension. Dependency and indemnity compensation. These are benefits that are primarily paid to qualifying survivors of veterans, so spouses or children, mainly. And this is triggered if a veteran's death was service-connected, or if the veteran was totally disabled because of a service-related condition at the time of death, usually for a certain amount of time. It depends. It sometimes can depend on what they passed away from. Non-service connected death pension. This is paid to qualifying survivors of a veteran whose death was non-service connected. They must have served 90 days of active duty. At least 1 day of that 90 days must have been during a wartime period. And the vet must have been discharged under conditions other than dishonorable. All new claims for this death pension benefit fall under what's called the Improved Pension Program. So if you're interested in figuring out more about that, I would Google Improved Pension Program. Okay? All right, VA healthcare. Now, this is a benefit that is primarily administered by the Veterans Health Administration, but eligibility-wise, you are probably going to fall under the Veterans Benefits Administration. So in order to receive VA healthcare, veterans have to be eligible and they have to be enrolled. It's not enough to be eligible, you have to be enrolled in the program in order to receive VA healthcare, okay? Eligibility for veterans. Enlisted after 1980, you've got that minimum 24 months of continuous active duty requirement, or the full period of time for which you were called up to active duty. For example, if you are a reservist or a National Guardsman who was called up for a year tour in Iraq or Afghanistan, if you served your full year in Iraq or Afghanistan, then you are now eligible for VA healthcare. There are many exceptions to this rule, including service-connected disability, like we talked about, and you have to have a qualifying discharge, meaning anything other than dishonorable. Okay. VA education benefits. Okay, I should also, I'm going to go back to VA healthcare for just a second. When we're talking about qualifying discharges, this is just kind of as a side note, the Code of Federal Regulations talks about being discharged from the service under conditions other than dishonorable. This can be really confusing because folks who are discharged with an other than honorable discharge or with a general under honorable conditions, the VA can sometimes say that you're not eligible for health care or for other benefits. If that's the case, you probably need to talk to somebody who can help you figure out how to go back to the VA and say, no, I actually do qualify for for these reasons, okay? So if you're honorable, you're straight in. If you're dishonorable, you're out. And there's also kind of that middle ground of discharges where the VA has some discretion to say whether or not you're eligible. For VA education benefits are plentiful, but they can be very confusing, okay? They're available to surviving dependent children, sometimes spouses. Vocational rehab falls under VA education benefits. And this benefit is great. Vocational rehab is great because it is not limited to those with an honorable discharge. So lots of different veterans with lots of different discharges can have access to this benefit. And it is not limited to the most recent veterans. So a lot of folks can have access to this benefit. For the post 9/11 GI Bill, which is another really popular education benefit, you have to use it within 10 years. You get a tuition and living stipend, and it is restricted to veterans with an honorable discharge. So that's basically all I have tonight. Just a little qualifying message. I don't intend any of this to be legal advice. I just want this to help some veterans out along the way. If you have a question or need assistance in any way, my office number is 802-831-1500. Again, my office number at the South Royalton Legal Clinic is 802-831-1500. And I'm going to pass it back to Tom to fill in the gaps of anything that I might have missed.
Thank you, Katelyn. You did not miss much. Let me say at the outset that going into the process of making a claim or trying to deal with the Veterans Administration, you need to have the help of somebody who knows the ropes. The Veterans Administration was originally based on the premise that the veterans didn't need any help. In particular, for I guess about 120 years, it was a federal felony for somebody to represent a veteran before the Veterans Administration and collect money. Then it was modified, I think, about 1987 to permit fees of up to $10 per case. Needless to say, that wasn't very popular among the members of the bar, so our Senator Sanders finally got a hold of the people in the Veterans Administration and said, look, you're not going to get any lawyers to help the veterans unless they get reasonably compensated. So now, although compensation is, in my view, sort of limited, and I'm not going to ask for any compensation from veterans, but at least now some people are encouraged to help the veterans. But the premise that the Veterans Administration was founded was that the veterans, it was understood that after the Civil War the veterans needed help. And and as President Lincoln said, the purpose of the Veterans Administration is to care for him who has borne the battle and for his widow and orphan by serving and honoring the men whose patriotic service have earned our freedom. So from that, the Veterans Administration's objectives are to honor the debt to the men and women whose patriotic service and sacrifice have earned our freedom by giving meaning and assistance to provide medical and financial help and to maintain cemeteries that are national shrines to honor the memory of the deceased veterans. That is our national policy. So it's the VA's duty to follow these objectives. However, at the same time, they are limited. They have a duty to follow congressional mandates and congressional budgets, which sometimes conflicts with this obligation. The VA is operated by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, which Katelyn has already explained, and she's explained the various areas in which the Veterans Administration operates. The VA is governed by federal law, that is the federal statutes of the United States, and it's further defined within the Code of Federal Regulations in Title 38. Plus the legal opinions of the VA's Office of General Counsel and the decisions made by the various courts or administrative agencies that are within the VA, such as the called the Board of Veterans Appeals and the Court of Appeals for Court of Veterans Appeals, which is a federal court where you go into the judicial system. The veterans are defined that for purposes of the VA is a person who has served an active duty in the military, naval service, or Air Force. The discharge, in order for them to be eligible for most benefits, has to be other than dishonorable. The VA does not consider the dishonorable discharge to have any force and effect or eligibility for veterans' benefits. So the veteran has to establish, as Katelyn said, first of all, eligibility for his any VA benefits, which is his the service in the military, and to establish the entitlement to a particular benefit by following what the rules are for these benefits. There are 5 types of discharge. The honorable discharge is given for honorable service to the country, both personally and professionally. A general discharge is a discharge under honorable conditions that was not quite at the level of an honorable discharge. The other types of discharge, such as a bad conduct discharge, is normally given for in cases involving either a special court-martial for minor offenses in the military, or was given as or the veteran had been given punishment for a crime while in the military, but it was a civilian court that decided it. And the dishonorable discharge is something that's only given by a general court-martial or the dismissal of an officer for cause, which totally takes away the benefits. Discharges can be overturned, particularly the bad conduct discharge or undesirable discharge can be overturned by the, I've forgotten the name of the board, but there is a board within the Pentagon that does do this if there are compelling reasons to do so. And this is can be the subject of a hearing at in Washington, and and sometimes these if there's or documented reasons why the discharge should be overturned, that will be considered. For instance, if somebody has PTSD and it was not recognized as something that was caused by the service or caused by incidents in the service, which is often not recognized in the earlier days, particularly from the 70s until fairly recently. Many people were given undesirable discharges by administrative boards within each of the military services. That would no longer be the case, and if that can be proven, the discharge would be upgraded to either an honorable or a general discharge. Now, there is a presumption that any injury or death of an individual who has been on active duty is incurred as a result of being in the service. The presumption can become overcome by the VA if they can establish by a preponderance of the evidence that the service member engaged in actual willful misconduct, such as alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or venereal disease. Disabilities as a result of willful misconduct cannot be the basis for voc rehab benefits or education benefits. Ultimately, if the veteran achieves a disability, he will be rated by the rating officer, and that disability ratings range from 0% to 100%, and in 10% increments. You begin to get compensated. 0% disability rating is not necessarily a bad thing because it does acknowledge, the VA is acknowledging that the service member was disabled while in the course of his duties, but and it gives certain more intangible benefits, such as an upgrade in the right to hospitalization is one that comes to mind. But after 10%, there are disability payments that are actually made, monthly payments, which revert back to the date of the time that the application was made. You can also have, in addition to that, special monthly compensation, which can be more than 100% of the disability rating. You could have, for instance, 60% for one condition, say diabetes, 40% for PTSD, and have, because you have problems with the loss of use of a limb, eyesight, speech, hearing, mobility, or a sexual organ, you could get significantly more money, so you might be getting rating with all the ratings, with combined ratings, would equal 130%, for instance. Now, to develop claim, Katelyn's already explained what it must, the three steps of an existing condition, and an occurrence or an aggravation of the condition while on active duty, and the nexus or the relationship between the two. The one thing that she did not mention was that there are certain presumptive conditions that are presumed related. For instance, if you are a Vietnam veteran, there and you have any number, there are probably 3 pages of small print of conditions that were caused by Agent Orange, including various types of heart conditions, liver conditions, kidney conditions, that are compensable by because you simply were on the ground in Vietnam sometime between 1961 and 1975. So that is, and these conditions need not necessarily manifest themselves at the time of your discharge. They may manifest themselves years later, but and you might have a combination of these conditions. So if you're an elderly veteran, it's particularly significant that these records be reviewed by medical professionals to determine whether or not you are eligible and could be getting a pension, or I should say disability benefits from the VA, because they can be significantly valuable to you. Also, injuries such as asbestos often do not come along until much later, 20 or 30 years after you've been exposed to asbestos. But if you can prove that you have certain types of cancers and that you were exposed to asbestos, that will get you compensation if just because you were exposed to the asbestos while you were in the military. So the VA will check these records. This is why it's sometimes important that you just take the slower route in order to and let the VA investigate, and you do further investigation on your own or with the assistance of your attorney to determine whether or not there is more to it than what you think is your fully developed claim, because it may not be a fully developed claim. And I don't think you can change that in mid-track. So the basic forms that you have to submit for compensation are your discharge from active duty, your DD-214, and your application form, whichever application form you're going to file, and the statement in support of the claim, which is another form. Now, there are many, many other forms that you may need to submit, and you need help. I'm not sure I even understand the totality of the forms that the VA may require, but so it's a learning process for everybody involved in this. So in any event, I think that between Katelyn and I, we've talked about most of the highlights of what needs to be done. I would encourage anybody to contact me. My telephone number is 802-254-8155. That's 802-254-8155. This is my retirement cell phone. I have it on me all the time, and I will get back to you, and we can meet here at Post 5 at the American Legion, and I'll be happy to assist any of you. Thank you. Also, the Veterans Administration has provided the attorneys, and with any veteran actually, the Veterans Benefit Manual, which is, this is the latest version for 2015, which contains virtually all the information you need to have to file a claim. It's not totally complete. For instance, I found that there are references to the need the conditions that are being compensated for Camp Lejeune veterans who were injured by the contaminated water, but so you have to go to the Code of Federal Regulations for some of these items, but this contains the bulk of the information that you need in order to file and successfully process a claim.